Hey there, fellow wanderers, and welcome back to the Wandering Gypsy RV Life podcast. I'm your host, Stan Cromlish, author of the Rolling Smooth RV book series, coming to you from somewhere out on the open road with Bertie Bea and Rosie. This podcast is where the RV lifestyle meets real stories from the road, the lessons learned along the way, and conversations with people who live this life in their own unique way. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's see where the road takes us today. So today I am joined by Avanti Lalwani, the president of Briter Batteries, and she is here on the Wandering Gypsy RV Life podcast to discuss RV electricity. We're going to go through everything from inverters to lead acid batteries, AGM batteries, and then ultimately lithium batteries. So, Avanti, tell me a little bit about your role as president of Briter Batteries and what got you into the RV electricity game.
Well, thank you for asking the question. It's one of my favorite stories. So my dad is a mechanical engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a business in northern Indiana,
Okay.
and we've been serving different transportation industries since 1947.
1947.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The business was started up by 4 World War II vets.
Okay.
And then my parents bought the business in 1978.
Okay.
And the grandson of one of the founders, we're still friends.
Great.
We're still in contact with them.
Great.
So in the day, it was all mechanical products, right?
Okay.
We saw solutions were based on a mechanical part, a mechanical component.
Okay.
At some point, we started to work for the RV plants.
Okay.
And my dad is a mechanical engineer, but what he noticed on one of his meetings in 2010, roughly, he noticed that the electrical systems in RVs would never support, the batteries would never support the loads that they were starting to include in these campers, in these RVs.
Okay.
So he came home one day and his head was down and his shoulders were kind of slouched forward.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, gosh, there's got to be something we can do. And by that time, lithium batteries had already really proven themselves in things like the Apple iPhone.
Right.
And things like laptops. So by 2010, there was an understanding that lithium batteries can be designed at higher capacities.
Okay.
And so that's how we designed our own battery.
Okay. So most RVers think they need more battery, but what they really need is a better system. Don't you agree?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
So talk us through what a better system looks like from an RV standpoint for RV electricity.
That is a really important question. And I think it requires us to take a look at things from a systems point of view. It doesn't make sense anymore when we're talking about dry camping or when we're talking about being off grid. It doesn't make sense to only focus on your batteries because that's not what you're really going to be focusing on when you're dry camping, right? When you dry camp, you're going to need your lights to run. You're going to need your refrigerator to run.
Right.
You're going to need possibly some outlets. So looking only at your battery bank and then your goal, what happens is the rest of the system is sort of overlooked for a moment. So now that we're looking at the entire system and what your battery bank could support, it's really everything. It's really Are your wires inside your RV or your coach, are they the right size? Are all sources of internal resistance, um, are they controlled? Um, so for instance, I don't know if you want me to just do
Keep
examples?
going.
Yeah? So, for instance, there's a tremendous amount of power that is lost just if the terminals on your battery are hooked up to corroded wires. There's
Okay.
a tremendous amount of power that is lost that way. Um, Maybe also um, there might be appliances that could be used that are more energy efficient,
Right.
right?
I know the most energy inefficient is my space heater.
Yes.
It is. And here in Bertie Bea, I had a 2,000 watt Magnum inverter that died in January.
Mm.
And I was at the Tampa RV Super Show. And I made a couple of decisions based on a conversation you and I had about a year ago. I said, I've already got the Victron solar controller. I've already got so the Magnum they couldn't get in the week I was there, and to go back when I left Tampa to go back to Alabama, that would mean that my refrigerator, if I didn't get the inverter fixed, would be off for that entire 8-hour trip. So I replaced the 2,000 watt Magnum inverter with a 50 amp, two leg, 3,000 Victron Multi Plus 2 and added, as I showed you earlier, the touchscreen for managing
Mhm.
all of that. The conversation you and I had was about being able a year or so ago to run my air conditioners on my battery bank through the inverter. And I felt like I had set myself up pretty well in going to the Multi Plus 2 with two legs. What's your opinion on the Victron Multi Plus 2? Will it be a bulletproof system for me?
It's a great system, and I think the way you use power,
Mm-hmm.
it would be a bulletproof system for you. Um, Probably for most people, and I think also for this coach, the air conditioner is not necessarily wired to run off the inverter and the battery bank.
It's not, but I have that second leg now
Correct.
on the Multi Plus 2, which would be able to make it available at
Correct.
some point.
Yeah. So you definitely have the pieces, the components to the system that you need. And then there might come a time where all of it gets, connected together, that
Right.
that that everything is lined up to each other.
Yes.
Um, so a 3,000 watt inverter is a really nice step up from a 2,000 watt inverter because now now that it's got the two legs on it, you can you can access more power. If you're wanting to use a particular outlet or make things available that never were before.
Yes. So the good thing about Bertie Bea, that's my coach. I named her Bertie Bea. Um, is the fact that every interior outlet is wired to, except for the microwave, is wired to the inverter. So anywhere I want to plug in I can plug in. I've got four 6-volt Trojan AGM batteries underneath a step. At some point, I may replace those with lithium. And there again, that Magnum was not lithium compatible. So I would have had to replace my inverter anyway. So let's talk about batteries. There's a whole lot of discussion out there. You see some of the Teslas that burn up.
Yeah.
So my concern with lithium is just that if they're miswired or whatever, can the RV batteries catch fire like those in other devices or automobiles?
That's a really big question. So the first thing is, when you look at an electric vehicle battery, compare that to a RV battery, they are both using a lithium chemistry, but they are not the same lithium chemistry. So an electric vehicle battery will have more cobalt in it, which
Okay.
allows it to ignite, because when we turn the engine on, we need a very high inrush of power, but then it comes essentially down
Right.
because there aren't appliances inside. Most of the time there aren't really so many appliances in an EV. You might have something, connected up to your dash,
Right.
but there's nothing like in an RV where you're constantly running. So say refrigerator, lights, those constant devices that are on.
Yes.
So a lithium battery in an RV is not going to have the cobalt. It's not going to have that it's not going to have that ability to support a high inrush of power.
So let's break that down a little bit. So when you start the engine on a car, truck, RV,
Correct.
that is it requires a huge inrush of power.
Absolutely.
And I've noticed that most cars on the road that are not a EV still use a AGM or a lead acid battery, mainly because of how much cranking power is required.
Correct.
But in an RV, the closest thing you would get to a quick inrush of power would be something like my space heater or the air conditioner
Quite right.
pulling a lot of power.
Correct.
So I've added soft starts to both ACs, which will help with some of that quick inrush of power. So what can people do to prolong the life of their batteries and be able to run the things they need to run? Like, I know that my dad has a CPAP machine,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to make sure, if you're off grid, that your battery bank can hold enough life to run that CPAP machine overnight until you either can crank the generator or you can plug into shore power and recharge the batteries, or if you've got solar, the sun comes up.
Correct.
And solar recharges the batteries. So let's talk a little bit about a standard RV power requirements for something like, let's say we're not running the ACs, we're just doing power for like a refrigerator, a CPAP machine. How much power is required to do day-to-day stuff,
Mm-hmm.
not counting the air conditioners?
Not counting the air conditioner. There was a study done by the RVIA in
Okay.
2019.
Mm-hmm.
And in that survey, they found the average RV needed about 5 to 10 kilowatts of power. So 5 to 10,000 watts, 5,000 to 10,000 watts of power when you're not including the air conditioning. If one wanted to include air conditioning in that power draw for a 24-hour cycle, the estimate was about 20 kilowatts or 20,000.
So I've got 4 100 amp hour AGM batteries. Will that support that number you just 5 to 10,000 watts for a 24-hour period?
No,
Okay.
it won't. And the reason why is if each battery has 100 amp hours in it,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have 4 of them, so that's
Right.
400 amp hours.
Right.
But you can't discharge all the way down to 0 on an AGM
No,
system.
it's 50. You can discharge down to 50. Let's talk about that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
where
yeah.
that's where I was going, and I just wanted to get this set the table.
Yeah.
So talk about the differences between lead acid AGM and lithium.
Mhm. So all the differences come from their chemistries. So lead acid, there's actually a reaction that is happening that is depleting the materials on the inside of the battery, meaning the lead plates, the fluid. What's happening is there's a redox reaction, and at a certain point, you're not going to be able to complete that charge discharge cycle anymore because the materials in there have been changed.
Okay.
They've been changed. Now, it's in a fluidic environment, right? Those ions, those charged particles are coming through, grabbing electrons, dropping off electrons, and it's all mediated through this fluidic environment.
Okay.
Amazingly, absolutely astonishingly, lithium does all of that in a dry environment.
Okay.
So now that's the reason why we can use lithium batteries in laptops. And we don't short out our laptops, right? If a leak happens. Has anybody ever heard of a lithium battery leaking?
No.
No, it's a dry battery. It's a dry chemistry. Those ions, those electrons, all of that is being transported in a dry medium. Actually, not only a dry medium, but also in a solid medium. Lithium is it's the third element on the periodic table. So you have hydrogen, helium, and the next one
is lithium. That's unreal.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
So lithium wants to live life in a positive point of view. It wants to live as an Li+.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So what's it trying to do? It's trying to shuttle off that negative electron every chance it gets.
Kind of like, it's a person trying to shed that negative energy.
Yeah, just go away.
Just go away.
Just get over there.
Yes.
Sort of like, I don't know if ever you worked in pizza delivery. You have pizza. Yeah. It's good.
Right.
But you're the delivery person. You're not supposed to eat it.
No.
But you're supposed to get it over there, right?
Get it. Do the positive.
Do the positive thing. You're supposed to, your mission is accomplished once that pizza has left your
hands. Yes.
Lithium is the pizza delivery element of chemistry.
Okay.
Now, it wants to take that electron and it wants to transfer it to someplace.
Okay.
Now, what's happening? The pizza truck is empty, right? The pizza delivery truck is empty. So he
just goes back to the pizza shop and gets more pizza.
Yeah. But did you change the truck?
No.
Did you actually deplete the truck? No, you didn't.
No.
So what happens is, in the case of that battery charging back up, whether it's solar, whether it's pedestal, whether it's generator,
right?
There's an empty truck waiting
for life again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it wants to bring it back over there. But then as soon as it has it, it doesn't want to keep it.
As soon as it's full, it wants to get rid of it.
Yeah, correct. It wants to go and it wants to power something. So lithium, I know that's a very strange way to consider, like we're at the atomic level, but the atomic level does really follow some rules of regular life.
Right.
Right? There's some rules we all have to follow.
Yes.
So what happens is lithium, when it's being charged, you're not changing the internal architecture of the battery. And that's the reason why it lasts so much longer. Right? So to keep it maintained, you want to keep it in the right conditions so that delivery truck can still
deliver power to the items that need it. Like in my case, the refrigerator, my laptop, my space heater, my furnace, because the furnace is a 12-volt furnace. Once it fires, it fires on 12 volts, but then it burns propane. So it runs. But what do RVers think they need that they actually don't need when it comes to power?
Oh, I would say knowledge.
Right.
Knowledge. I mean,
we need knowledge.
We need knowledge.
Yes.
The system will only be as good as far as you know how to use it.
Right.
Right? So understanding that these particular batteries want to be charged at this rate. All lithium batteries are not the same. I was asked by an executive at one of the RV plants at okay, Avanti, aren't all black boxes the same as the next black box? And the answer is no.
It's kind of like saying, are Apple computers the same as a Microsoft Windows computer?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Is a crown the same as a winter cap?
Right. No.
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 No, they have different functions, right?
Is a polo shirt the same, a cotton polo shirt the same as this wool shirt I'm wearing?
No.
No, not at all.
No. There's some common ground.
Right. They're all in my case, it's cloth.
Yeah.
But the wool is a whole lot warmer. And today in Perry, Georgia, it's 32 degrees
It is
this morning.
cold.
It is
I'm
cold
loving
this
this.
morning.
Yeah.
But so that begs the question, how does temperature, okay, so going back to lead acid, which you've got to maintain, like you've got to once a month add distilled water because you've got to keep your fluid level right. AGMs, you don't have as much maintenance with them, but are lithiums truly maintenance free?
I would argue that they're not.
Okay.
I would not. They are not truly maintenance free. As an example, you want to make sure that your wires are clean, the connections are clean. You want to make sure that they're tightened. If somebody is a full-time RVer,
like me,
I would recommend checking your battery connections twice a year.
And
absolutely.
And I am.
Good.
Because that is one of the things that, we are, and you may not realize this, folks, every time you put your RV in motion, you have just set off a Richter 5 earthquake for ever how many miles you're traveling down the road. And what does all that shaking and vibration do? Loosens connections, loosens screws. And
now imagine doing that on a 100-degree day.
Right.
On a 90-degree day.
Right. And so how temperature, knowing that I came from 80-degree weather in Alabama on Saturday to 32-degree weather today, how do temperature cycles affect batteries and battery life?
Oh, in a lot of ways, in numerous ways. So what happens is chemistry, all elements in chemistry, they have to obey their environmental conditions. Meaning, if they're in sub-freezing temperature, we expect everything to behave differently, right?
Right.
Even your solid materials. So tires that are frozen are quite different than tires that are out in the sun that are at 100 degrees, right?
Right.
That rubber has changed its rigidity. So we can see that in solid items, but then in electrical, what happens is the elements inside the battery, if it's a fluidic system, it's going to be a lot slower because the fluids themselves are now getting to approaching a freezing point. If it's not exactly freezing, it's going to be approaching a freezing point. And then in the case of high temperature conditions on a lead acid battery, there's a lot more heat. And heat, when current is transferred through the wires, is sort of the beginning of how internal resistance is stored. That's why wires age, because there's been a lot of heat that's one of the reasons there's been a lot of heat that's transferred through those wires and is also stored.
So heat cycles over time, they wires last a long time, but over time those heat cycles can break down the wires.
Indeed. And
Do I have that understanding correctly?
it's correct. So have you ever bent a really old piece of wire and the jacketing wants to crack,
Oh, yes.
and then the wire feels so stiff it doesn't want to, it's a hardened.
Or a better example is, um, I found a rubber band in one
Yep.
of my grandmother's desk drawers. The rubber band was probably 50, 60 years old. I stretched it,
Mhm.
and before I knew it, it went about 2 inches and broke
Correct.
because it had lost that elasticity.
Yes.
And that's the same thing that happens to wiring.
Indeed. Indeed. In the case of the rubber band, there are sulfuric bonds that have been severed, and that's the reason why you don't have that elasticity
Mm-hmm.
anymore. In the case of metals, they will harden. They will become more brittle.
Okay.
And so they don't have that
Yeah.
the
The stretch or
stretch.
the resilience, and one or two good bumps going down the road
Yeah.
can break those wires.
Yeah. And then the other thing to keep in mind with batteries is that we're not only working with wires, that's metal and rubber. Many battery battery designs are actually in a plastic. Now that ABS plastic that we're allowed to use, the minimum that we're allowed to use for RVs is an ABS plastic that will melt at 450 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
Now imagine you have 100-degree day on the road, which is not hard to get to.
Nope, it's not.
And then imagine, you've got a loose wire and you're losing power in the form of heat.
Mm-hmm.
The metals will be able to take it, but a battery is not. Most batteries are not only, um, you know, a metallic part, but there's also plastic parts. I've seen so many lead acid batteries and even lithium ones too, at the different events, at different rallies, where they've actually deformed.
Wow.
In the sense of possibly a melting, a bulging.
Good. I've got a classic example of that. I had a laptop. It was a MacBook with a lithium battery in it. The back of the bottom of if you flipped it over, that's where the battery and the keyboard and all of that live.
Yeah.
It had actually bulged the case about an eighth of an
Oh,
inch.
yeah.
So, that right there is a classic example of what you're talking about. The lithium ion battery deformed and bulged, mainly probably from heat
From
or,
heat, exactly.
yep.
From heat. And lithium batteries are, especially for laptop ones, those designs are designed to take some amount of inflation, like because of that higher amount of heat,
Yeah.
but not a lot.
And not over a long period of time.
Correct.
So I had that laptop 10 years, so
You-
I got the goodie out of it. I got the goodie out of it.
So that laptop lasted. What was the first thing to go? The battery or the lap? What was the thing?
Neither one. They
still work.
But the problem for me was I needed more memory, more processor, more hard drive. And, and that's one of the, not to promote Apple products, but that's one of the things that drew me to the Mac is you didn't have to upgrade every 2 years, every 3 years. It kept on working.
Correct.
And until Apple said, well, we're no longer supporting that model, which they support them about 10 years.
Yeah.
So, but getting back to this, let's say I had lead acid batteries in here and for 3 months, I didn't add the water. I did not maintain my batteries. Is there a chance for boilover?
Depends.
So let's say I'm down below the plate with my water. It has evaporated. What kind of problems will I see for a lack of water?
You're going to deplete the lead plates.
Okay.
You're because it's going to still try to force the reaction. So it's going to try to keep exchanging ions, but it really doesn't have the materials to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and there will be a buildup of heat
Mhm.
because of that.
And pressure.
And okay. So, are you opening yourself up to a catastrophic failure?
Um, you might be.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Okay.
might be.
So, one of the key takeaways if you've got lead acid batteries is make sure you keep them filled.
Mhm.
They all have a level, and you read the instructions in your battery manual for how to add distilled water to your lead acid batteries.
I would highly encourage reading manuals, especially to batteries.
In my book series, Rolling Smooth, I talk about the manuals that come with RVs. You've got your manual for power, your generator, your batteries, all of the systems in your RV. Make sure you read those manuals because they can bail you out of trouble when a slide doesn't work. They can help you find that stubborn fuse that blew when you plugged in a space heater and a hair dryer on your inverter circuit and popped the breaker.
Right.
But those manuals are there to make sure you continue rolling smooth.
Correct. And the thing I would say with the brilliance of having manuals available to read, whether digital or physical, the thing about that is every RV is so completely different from the next. Even if they're only an age difference of up to, say, even a month, even there might be different options, there might be different appliances that were employed. So knowing there are so many products in a given RV. I think I heard someone in Elkhart say there are over 50,000 parts in one Class A.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
50,000 parts going down the road, Richter 5 earthquake.
Yep.
They've got to withstand heat extremes, cold extremes, and the bouncing down the road. There's so many moving parts.
And I have to say, one of the ways we think about RVs being on this side of the line,
yes.
a lot of people will say, okay, my RV is my vehicle. It's my vacation. It's my home. It's my work office.
Yep.
A lot of people, there's many ways to think about a person's RV. Maybe it's a work truck. Everybody's thinking about RVing and camping in these different ways. For us, when we look at an RV, we say that is your mobile personal power plant
Right.
because the systems that are most internal, the systems that are very unlike any other power system in construction, is the electrical system. So you've got voltage coming in off your alternator, you've got DC coming in off your alternator, you've got a vastly different type of power coming in from generator, you've got AC power coming in from shore, and then you have solar. And you can have as many as 3 different types of voltage levels coming into an RV at the same time, and they're all communicating with each other, believe it or not.
Right.
So, when getting back to your Victron system, because it's on my mind,
Okay.
the one thing that Victron does so very well is it lets you see the different pieces of your system and how they're all working together.
That's what I love about the Victron touchscreen. I can see at a glance
Yeah.
what's going on, and I can see that where there might be a problem, or
That
where there or in my case where I overloaded a circuit and it said thank you no and shut the system down for a minute.
Yeah.
Which is people, you can get upset when a system shuts down power to your rig. But once you read the manual and learn the limitations of the system, in my book, I talk about 30 amp versus 50 amp. I talk about shore power versus generator power. I don't go into solar much because mainly I'm not versed on solar. Even though I've got 4 solar panels on the roof, I don't know how they work. I don't know what they do. I just know they charge my batteries.
Can I give you the 30-second version
Give me the Cliff Notes version.
The Cliff Notes version?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have the sun.
Yep.
It's about, 3 planets away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a giant reactor. The sun is just an absolutely giant reactor. And 9 minutes from the surface of the sun, there's a particle of light that leaves it, particle of light and heat, and it comes to the earth. We have a solar panel on our roof, and it has black cells. Those are silicon cells.
Okay.
And those cells have been loaded. It's just bombarded with extra electrons. They're waiting at the gate.
Okay.
Now, you have this little bit of light, just like a bowling ball in a bowling alley.
Okay.
That little bit of light is going to have the effect of knocking these pins over at the end of the lane.
Okay.
Those pins, the electrons, are going to then find their nearest conductor, and they're going to create a current. So the way solar works is it's very much using the energy of the photon, just using that packet of energy that's coming in from the light to move electrons that were already pre-saturated,
pre-charged.
Pre-charged for that in the silicon cells, creating a current that then goes down the wires to your solar charge controller.
Yep. And then from the solar charge controller, they go to your batteries.
And then they go to your batteries. Yep.
Okay. So, couple of questions. I've read where people are either oversizing or undersizing their batteries. What is the process that Briter Batteries goes through to determine the required amount of battery for a given system?
That's a great question. What we've developed over the years is sort of a 4-step process.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step we want to know is, what are your goals?
Okay.
Some people might say, I want to dry camp in the desert for 2 weeks and not leave my camping spot until I need water.
Okay.
Some people say we want to remove the generator and we want to lighten up our RV, replace with solar and lithium batteries, and use that as our main source of power. So, and then there's some people that say we just want to keep our engine batteries charged because we camp in a place for 4 months at a time and we don't turn the engine back on. So there's lots of different electrical goals, a lot of different goals. So you look at what's the goal that we need to hit. First thing.
Okay.
Second thing we look at is what's being used.
Okay.
Let's do the math. This refrigerator, there are some RVs with a basement freezer, with a residential fridge, and then a wine cooler.
Okay.
So we're looking at three power draws, and we haven't even gotten into the outlets or what else is going on.
Right. Or the Keurig coffee maker.
Yeah, the
Keurig
coffee maker. Yeah. So we like to say, what do we use on a daily basis?
Mm-hmm.
How much power is that? And then we
I think I have a real world example.
Oh.
I do. I think I have a real world example. When my Keurig is brewing a pot of coffee, it pulls 1,200 to 1,500 watts.
Correct.
So but then once it's got the coffee brewed, it pulls 200 watts to keep the carafe hot. So I know until my coffee pot is complete, I cannot cut on a space heater.
Correct.
Because if I do, it's going to hit overload and shut down every outlet.
Right.
So it was chilly this morning, but I remembered that the only thing I could do first is if I wanted coffee, I couldn't have space heater.
Correct.
So I made my coffee. It dropped to 200 watts. I looked at my touchscreen and I said, now
Yeah.
I can cut on my space heater.
Right.
So that is power management.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's something over time RVers learn, especially we're here this week at the 112th FRVA International Convention, and there are about 100 seminars covering everything from electrical to water to internet and you're presenting a couple of seminars here.
Yeah.
What are you presenting this week?
So far we have 3 seminars. One is on solar,
Okay.
another one on lithium,
Okay.
lithium batteries, and then a third one, a brand new one, which I'm really excited about, how to read your apps.
Okay.
Because now, say in the past 2 years, a lot of products, especially with solar and with lithium and inverters, there's so many apps available.
Oh, I love my Victron app. I love my Victron app.
It's right there with you.
It's right here with me. Yes. Yes. So what order should RVers think when building a system? Loads, inverter, battery, charging, that order? What's the order when you're building a system?
First thing is, what are the electrical goals?
Okay.
And then say, where are we right now?
Okay.
So right now we're at a place where we have one residential style fridge. We want to run space heater. We want to run coffee pot, hair dryer. Say, where are we at right now? And then take a deeper look at what your battery bank size is.
Mm-hmm.
What chemistry is it? How far it'll support you? How fast it wants to be charged?
Okay.
Believe it or not, every battery is not designed the same. So they all have an optimal recharge rate that's different.
Okay.
That's the reason why RV chargers can be sometimes 40 amps, 55 amps, 60 amps, 80 amps, because every battery wants to recharge at a different rate.
Mm-hmm.
The materials will allow for them to be recharged at a different rate. And then from that point in time, take a look at where you want to go.
Okay.
So if you are a camper that wants to be in the woods, in, like forested areas,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, think about having more capacity on board, like in your batteries.
So I've got a Starlink on the roof, which we know from the documentation, it has snow melt features and all of that. And it could end up being a wild card draw, especially if it's snowing, raining, and it needs to heat up because it will pull a lot more watts and pull a lot more voltage to heat the surface of that Starlink satellite antenna.
100% it will. Absolutely. And one way to think about it is, to take a look at your appliances that you use heavily in a given day.
Mm-hmm.
Every owner is going to use different appliances, but take a look at what you use and go to the manual and see what's its electrical, what's its current draw.
What the specification is for that device. The cool thing about the Victron is I can cut the coffee maker on, look at my touch, and I can see immediately how much power's being drawn.
Yes. Yes.
And having that information at your fingertips helps tremendously and helps you manage your electrical loads far more precisely.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
Absolutely. And given that, in the concept that the RV is your personal mobile power plant, you need to know what your plant is producing.
Exactly.
Right? It's your power plant.
So, realistically, can RVers run air conditioners on battery?
Yes. With the right
There's a caveat, it sounds like.
With the right batteries.
With the right batteries.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that I would not try with my 400 amp hour AGM batteries to run my air conditioners, even though I do have soft starts on them, because it will only take about 15 minutes to deplete down to 50% my AGM batteries. So I would assume, what does it take to do that right? Does it take lithium?
I would say so.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. With the air conditioners we have widely available on RVs, you want to use a soft start.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I would say the most efficient system is lithium paired with solar.
Okay.
Because you on a Class A, you've got the real estate up there to have an amount of solar that can keep up or outproduce more than the air conditioner is looking for.
Okay. So I've got 680 watts of solar on my roof in 4 panels.
Yeah.
So I think an air conditioner pulls, what does it pull? 1,500 watts, 2,000 watts?
Most of the time, we've seen 1,100 watts to 1,500 watts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I've only got 680 watts of solar on the roof and I'm running my air conditioner, I'm depleting my batteries by another 720 watts.
Easily.
Yes. So, or 820 watts.
Yeah.
So to do a setup right, you have to have the right amount of solar on the roof and the right amount of lithium batteries.
Correct.
So a setup with 600 amp hours, how long realistically would that run an air conditioner?
So on our batteries,
Mm-hmm.
we had 400. So let me go back. I won't talk about our batteries. What I'll say is it depends on what each battery has been designed to cut off at.
Okay.
Right? So if they're healthy batteries and if they go all the way down to 0 is one thing. If they're going to cut off at 20% or if they're going to cut off at, X percent, that's that much less you have access to.
Okay.
In our testing, we've seen putting a heavy tarp on the solar so the batteries are truly just running off. The air conditioner is truly running off the batteries only. We've seen 4 to 6 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what separates high quality lithium batteries from low quality lithium batteries? What is there are every day I open up email or open up social media or open up an RV industry article and they're touting X brand lithium batteries are now the best. But what truly differentiates high quality lithium batteries from run of the mill lithium batteries?
I would say the way I would tell the difference between a better battery and sort of an introductory battery is the type of cells they used. Because that'll tell the chemistry and where all that power is being produced or where it's being discharged from is the cell.
Okay.
And if that cell so, for instance, a cylindrical cell is very different than a prismatic cell.
Okay.
So a prismatic cell that's the highest.
Is that the highest quality? The prismatic is the highest quality? Okay.
Correct. And it's also the most expensive. So a prismatic cell will have 25 amp hours in one cell.
Okay.
So to get to 100 amp hours, you only need 4 cells.
Okay.
Which means on the negative side of each cell and on the positive side of each cell, you only need 4 pairs of wires.
Okay.
So every point in electricity, every point where you have a connection is a point of vulnerability.
Okay.
Over time. Because we're doing that level 5 on the Richter scale. We're doing that even though we can't get into it and see it.
Right.
We've repaired so many of our competitors' batteries at this point. We've seen there be problems happen just because there's a loose wire internal to the battery.
Okay.
Yeah. And so another lithium battery, if they're using a prismatic a cylindrical cell,
Mm-hmm.
the cylindrical cell only has 1 amp in each battery. It looks like a AA lithium battery. Well, to get to 100 amp hours,
You need 100 of them.
you need 100 of them, which means you need 200 connections or
200
pairs.
Or 100 pairs. Yeah.
Right. 100 pairs of connections, which means any one of those loosening
Mm-hmm.
is a tremendous source of problems right now.
Okay. So let's close this out. Avanti, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you on social media or the web? So tell people where they can find Briter Batteries and Avanti Lalwani.
Sure. My email is avanti.lawani@briterproducts.com. The website is www.briterproducts.com. And the Facebook page is fb.com/briterproducts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know that you've helped a bunch of RVers over the past 10, 15 years roll smoother with their power setups. Thank you again for your time.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll have to do this again sometime.
I can't wait.
Good. Thank you for riding along with me today for this episode of the Wandering Gypsy RV Life Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast with a fellow traveler so more folks can find us out here on the road. You can find more stories, photos, and adventures over at WanderingGypsyRVLife.com. If you're looking for gear that helps keep your rig running right, check out Techno RV through my affiliate link at technorv.com. They really do help you adventure more and worry less. And if you enjoy cowboy storytelling and rodeo history, my good friend Doug Simcox hosts a great podcast called Beyond the Chutes, which is well worth a listen at beyondthechutes.show. If you'd like to dive deeper into the mindset behind this lifestyle, you can check out the Rolling Smooth RV book series at WanderingGypsyRVLife.com/rolling smooth. Until next time, keep your rig rolling smooth, keep your coffee hot, and remember, sometimes the best repair isn't just the one that fixes your RV. It's the one that quiets your mind. Safe travels, my friends. And remember, not all who wander are lost.